if you're confused after watching day 4 and day 5, or attempting to watch day 4 and 5, you're not alone. A lot went on there, a lot of things that you may not understand, and I'm going to explain to you what went down those days, the important stuff, right after this intro. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. So good to have you here as subscribers and members. And if you're not subscribed, please do. Also, everybody, if you don't mind, hit that thumbs up button. And there's now a new thing you can do. If you scroll over down there below, you can get to hype. And you can hype the video, which also helps the algorithm now. Who knew? I'm getting all kinds of new subscribers, and thank you so much for subscribing. I do really appreciate it. Let's get on with day 4 and 5 of the Daisy Link case. So Daisy's on trial for second-degree murder, which means the state does not have to prove premeditation or planning or that kind of thing. So second-degree murder. And with a deadly weapon, that always gets tacked on there. So there was, on days 4 and 5, a lot went down, but some of what went down was that the defense wants a self-defense jury instruction. They want the jury to be able to find that this was self-defense. They also wanted a manslaughter instruction. So they want a lesser included offense on the verdict form, that being manslaughter, which means, they got into it and she accidentally shot and killed him. I really think in this case, between you and me, I think that's the appropriate verdict. I don't think there was ever any intent to kill this guy. The fact that he died was such a freak thing. It was really a freak thing, and I would agree with manslaughter on this one. Anyway, but that's just me. All right, so that was just one of the issues. There was another issue. The prosecution wanted to get into evidence a phone call, a jailhouse phone call. Now, this is something the jury will never know unless they watch the feeds back. There's a jailhouse phone call where the prosecution is making her an offer, a plea deal of 25 years. And she's like, 25 years? I might as well cut that man into pieces and scattered him all over Florida. And this is what this woman does not think before she speaks. And that could be part of the reason why we're here today. So anyway, the judge's like, no, that's, first of all, it's irrelevant. It's more prejudicial than probative, and it has to do with plea negotiations. It's just, all this shows is that there was a breakdown in plea negotiations. I scattered him all over South Florida. I thought that was funny. So that was not coming. And then they brought the mother in to tell her she was not allowed to leave Miami-Dade County because she had Pedro with her, Pedro Jr., and they wanted to depose Pedro Jr. Pedro Jr. didn't want to be deposed. He's only 11. God, what are you putting this kid through? They're like, no, we want to put him on the stand. And so I think she was threatening to take him back home to South Florida because, they're in Texas, take him back to Texas. Anyway, she wasn't allowed to leave. And we did hear from the son. He did testify, and I'll get to that. But where was I going? Okay. I just lost my train of thought, which is not unusual. Train tracks. Let's go. All right. Where was I? Okay. So once the prosecution rested their case, they brought, the defense brought in all of the family members. There was the niece, there was a sister, and there was mom. So what happened is there's a huge domestic violence history with these two individuals, with the victim and the defendant. Sometimes he would be arrested, sometimes she would be arrested. They kind of went at each other, and then they would make up, and he would say, "I love you," and it's never going to happen again. And they would go their separate ways, and they would come back together, and like, magnets, and things would happen. Anyway, so the only thing that the judge is allowing in with respect to historical abuse is that event that occurred 5 days before the murder. And that's when Pedro comes home from wherever he was, comes home, banging on the door to get in, because she had changed the locks, banging on the door to get in. It's like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And he gets in and he pistol whips her because she's having an affair with the guy that's there, who's actually her cousin. She wasn't having an affair with him, but she does later on admit she was having an affair with somebody. Anyway, hope it wasn't her cousin. That's just creepy. Okay, anyway. So after that occurs, she calls her sister, Crystal. She's got two, Gloria and Crystal, her two sisters. Her sister, Crystal, she calls her. Crystal comes over. Well, I'm mixing all this up because Daisy took the stand, and what she says is she stayed awake. Her cousin stayed with her after this beating. She stayed awake because he kept trying to not get her to fall asleep, because that's that old thing about if you have a head trauma or concussion, you're not supposed to let them go to sleep. So she stayed up till 5 o'clock in the morning, because then she couldn't stay awake any longer. She falls asleep. She wakes up at 5 p.m. Her sister comes over, Crystal, takes one look at her sister. It's like, you need to go to the hospital. I'll watch the kids. You go to the hospital. And she did. She went to the hospital. But the sister described it as she had open wounds on her skull. Like you could see parts of her skull. And her head was all swollen. And so she thought it was really, really bad. So her sister made a phone call to mom, who lives in Texas, and said, they had already made plans that over the July 4th weekend, this is in June when this happens, but over July 4th, they were going to come from Texas and get her, and she was going to move to Texas because because of this man, what he was doing to her. So mom's like, okay, maybe we have to move this timeline up. So mom flies from Texas with her granddaughter, who also testified. She didn't really have much to say, except that on one of the occasions while she was here, she was in a vehicle over at Daisy's house when she saw the victim outside. Nothing that really contributes to the jury's understanding of the case. But in any case, mom had a lot to say. She wanted to remove her daughter to safety immediately, and said they had already planned for July 4th, but because of the beating, they decided they would move this up. She arrived about 5 a.m. after she finds out. So the next day, she arrives 5 a.m. And Crystal picks her mom up from the airport, takes her to her house, Crystal's house, because her mom said she just wanted to get a feel for everything that was going on, and she didn't want Daisy to know she was there yet, until she could figure out what the situation was. So then the day of the event, she goes over to Daisy's house about 1:30. And her daughter Gloria had driven her over to Crystal drove her over to Daisy's house. She's there at Daisy's house about 1:30 in the afternoon, but then Gloria, the other sister, comes and gets grandma to go to her house for a little while. Then she comes back. Anyway, over the course of this particular first day, like Jose comes and goes. There was one point where he's there and she confronts him. Mom confronts him. How could you do this to my daughter? And he's like, I didn't do anything to your daughter. I haven't touched your daughter since 2016. I don't know what the significance of that is, but they get into this big debate, and he ends up leaving with several friends. So that's now we're up to the day of the event. Because she came in after the beating. So this is actually the day of the event. Pedro comes and goes 3 different times. And each time, like at one point, like she described, he clotheslined her, like, yeah, abusing the daughter, trying to choke her on one of the 3 times. And each time grandma's like, I'm calling 911. And Daisy's like, no, don't call 911. They'll deport him. I'll lose my children. And this is the crux of Daisy's case, or Daisy's thinking here. She thinks, and this is why she said she lied to the police about what happened, because there was a court order in place that he was to have limited visitation, but she was allowing him to come around whenever he wanted and visit the kids. And she thought, if the police come, they're going to deport him and they're going to take my kids away. So this is why she never wanted the police involved. So Mom, she gets fed up with it. She's like, fine, you're not calling the police. I'm out of here. It's 1:30 in the morning. Now she's been out there 12 hours. She's like, I'm out of here. Now at the point where she leaves, Pedro had gone off for the 3rd time. They'd run him off for the 3rd time. So she thinks, okay, he's not coming back tonight. So she leaves. And it's after that, around 3 in the morning, that the shooting occurs. Now, here is what Daisy had to say when she took the stand. And I've already covered some of what she said, but let me talk to you about her demeanor. It is very flat. And I thought she was like one of these kind of girls, the head bobbing, sassy. She's got makeup over her tattoos. She's got her hair combed just right so you don't see the tattoo over her eye, the numbers there. I don't know what the significance of that is. And she's got this long hair now. She's let it grow now since she was in jail, and she's overweight, but she just had a baby not long ago. So anyway, she answered everything very measured, with a lot of thoughts before she spoke, but not a lot of emotion, no regret, no remorse, or very little remorse in any case. So at the time, now when she took the stand, she talked about being with Pedro for 10 years. They had 2 kids, Pedro Jr., who's now 11, and Mia, who's 9. And then she described, how would you describe your relationship with him? Well, it was off and on, but it was very, when it was on, it was very nonchalant, like 2 ships passing in the night. You're just going to bang and then go back to your separate rooms. That's that kind of nonchalance, the nonchalance you get after 10 years if things aren't spiced up. Okay. So, and she said, he would come and go as he wanted to see the kids. He didn't live there, but he could come and go as he wanted. She did have the locks changed. And then 2 months prior to this, is when he had moved out and he had started staying at his mom's house. But here's the thing, and she said his mom was the one that was supposed to supervise his visits with the kids. His mom didn't even live in the house. Like, they kept saying he was staying at his mom's house. Well, he was, because his mother wasn't living there anymore. His mom had moved to Florida, or Georgia. Yeah, yeah, this is Florida. She had moved to Georgia. So she wasn't there anymore. So he's living in her house. Uh, but the police would find out like nobody was supervising these kids when he would visit them, and that's against court orders. And she said, they're going to take my kids away. So then she was shown two driver's licenses, and she identified that they were both his driver's licenses, and that he had his mother's address on both of them as his house, as his home address. Um, and that was it for that. So 5 days before, then she described what happened. She was sitting with her cousin David drinking beer in the kitchen. He had brought his 4 kids. Her 2 kids were there. They were playing Fortnite on the TV when she heard this loud bang. Pedro coming in the door, and he had never met her cousin, so she's defending him on the stand. He never met him, so he didn't have any way of knowing who that was. Well, he barges in and he starts wielding this gun, accusing her of sleeping with the cousin, and he takes the gun out, points it at her. She runs away from him, and when she does, he fires at her. This could have been the other way around, folks. He fires at her, misses, and then he goes over. They struggle over the gun. She gets control of the gun. He gets control back, because she was trying to fire it at him, and then she said, our fingers got intertwined, and he ends up getting the gun back and starts beating her nonstop over the head with this gun. She said she tripped, she fell outside. That's where he finally got her down to the ground, pinned down her arms and legs, and then bludgeoned her with the pistol. And she said she remembers her cousin shouting, and she just remembers being hit over and over again, and that it finally stopped when she heard her son screaming. And then afterwards, he obviously the victim, Jimenez, he leaves. But so she and her cousin are busy. They're packing up the kids. They're going to leave. They're not staying there anymore. And meanwhile, the police knock on the door because someone else had called the police. So the police did get involved. And she said, she tells everybody, oh, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy, except when he's under the influence of drugs or alcohol. She said he is a raging lunatic. How did she put it? He's a monster. He's a monster. When he's on drugs, he is a monster. She says, I'm not scared of him when he's sober. He is a nice guy, but he is a monster when he is drunk. So then she talks about Crystal coming over the next day and them calling the mom. So then we get up to the day of the incident. So her mom was over there that day, and at one point Daisy decides she's going to go get Pedro from his friend's house where he's doing the drugs. And the mom's like, well, you're not bringing him back here. And she's like, no, I'm going to drop him at his mom's house. That was the plan. Anyway, she picks him up. She's got other ideas. She wants him to talk to her mother. So she brings him back to the house, and the mom and he get into it like I've described earlier in the show. They get into it, and He leaves, but then he comes back. But here's the thing, she added in when she went to get him, they're like, "How do you know he was doing drugs?" Because I watched him buy 6 bags of cocaine before we left. Okay. So before I go any further, though, here's my theory, because nobody's talking about this. Was she on drugs too? Because he beat the crap out of her. Then he comes over the next day saying, I love you, it'll never happen again, I really love you, and she sleeps with him and they go on about their day. Is she on drugs? Is this what is this why she doesn't want the police called and she'll lose her kids? Because she's on drugs as well. Did anybody? Probably nobody even tested, did they? Anyway, so it's not till after her mom leaves later that night, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. She's outside having her cigarette, but she takes her gun with her because she's afraid he kept coming back all day long. So she brings the gun with her, and lo and behold, he comes back. They're arguing, and he starts running towards the house, saying he's going to lock her out. And so she fires the weapon. She says, I fired at the ground. As I'm pulling the weapon up, I fired at the ground. I just wanted the loud noise to scare him. I had no intention of hitting him. But after he gets shot, then he changes trajectory. He runs off towards the bush and where the blood trail and into the alley. And she admits she lied because she didn't want anybody to identify him. When she found him in the alley, that's why she took his wallet and his keys and his phone. She didn't want anybody to be able to identify him because then they would deport him. So this is why she lied to the police officers. I don't know what could have happened. I don't know. This was all so she could protect this evil man who just beat the crap out of her 5 days earlier. Who, is this why you didn't have the good sense to go to the hospital right away? Because your scalp's hanging out? Because you're high on drugs? This is what I'm not hearing, because she's certainly not thinking straight. That's for sure. So that's why she figured he's not going to die. He's going to live. And then when he lives, he'll just corroborate everything I said. All of her lies. He would corroborate him because he doesn't want to get deported either. This is what her thought process was. If I lie, he's going to live and he'll corroborate it. And then he won't go away. Oh my God. All right. Then last but not least, we hear from Pedro Jr. Pedro Jr., 11 years old. We didn't get to see him. He was on Zoom. Cute as a button. He was present on the night of the meeting 5 days before. He described how his mom ran and how it was heartbreaking. He described the whole, beating of his mom. The fact that those kids are subjected to that's awful. Anyway, and then the night of the incident, he said they were locked in their room because I knew how to unlock the room. Mom smiled when he said that. Anyway, so that's it. The defense rests. Prosecution put on a rebuttal witness, a police officer who was a detective who had this run-in with, not really a run-in. She went into the restroom. She went to use the restroom, and the defendant was in there as well. And she was with the homicide detective when they took Daisy to the bathroom. And the homicide detective was asking the domestic violence detective, what is it you do? Because she was there to shadow the homicide detective. And she's like, oh, I'm a domestic violence detective. And Daisy piped up and said, well, I'm a victim of domestic violence. So they wanted the jury to hear this. And the judge was like, no, it's, we're not getting into the weeds here. No. So, and anyway, the jury did get to hear it because they brought this woman back on a rebuttal, and she said there was really nothing more to it than that. She just asked me where I worked, that I told her, and she said she had been the victim of domestic violence. So that's as far as they took that. Anyway, so that's the episode. Today's closing arguments. I'm going to cover those live, and then we'll get the jury should have this case by lunch today, and I will see you guys there. Take care, everybody. Bye.